Can AI and chatbots replace therapists? Can they replace me? Let's find out on Through the Eyes of a Therapist.
I'm super anxious and can barely sleep. He responded, I can't wait to hop into my jammies later. Okay.
Over the past 2 years, a handful of startups have launched AI chatbots aimed at providing mental health resources, a sort of instant automated therapy.
Instant automated therapy. Instant. We want instant gratification in this society. It's hard to wait also when you're in crisis, I guess. So let's see what they say about that.
Wobot, a conversational bot that lets you share your troubles and teaches coping strategies at no cost.
Oh, Wobot. That's very clever. Like, what was me? Wobot.
This wall is sort of our wall of inspiration. Some of the giants from our field and people who've provided a lot of inspiration. This is Marshall Linehan, who created dialectical behavioral therapy. Sigmund Freud, who probably needs no introduction. Wobot is also changing the face of therapeutic services.
That's really cute, the eyeballs.
There's no shortage of free apps that help track moods and practice mindfulness. The use of AI in providing mental health support is new territory.
That's true. There are many apps that provide tracking mood, tracking behaviors, introducing meditation, guided meditation, mindfulness, relaxation. But there isn't, there are a few now that I'm aware of. I didn't know about that, but this is new. Being able to talk to a computer about your feelings and seeing if it processes things the same way a human therapist would.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm going to lead you through a series of questions.
Creepy. Very computerized. Very GTA.
Developers are cautious not to claim AI chatbots like Kareem, which was piloted in a Syrian refugee camp, are on par with human therapists. But some psychologists are concerned that people might use bots instead of professional therapy.
That's what I'm concerned about. Like, are they going to replace therapists with chatbots? That's scary to think about.
Which is inaccessible to many due to the high cost. Although online reviews are overwhelmingly positive, there is very limited research measuring these bots' impact. Wobot's team conducted a small trial that found talking to the bot reduced depression symptoms in 2 weeks.
But this is their own research. So I'm not saying that people do dishonest things in research. I am saying that, but I'm not saying these people did. I just know that you have to think about who is doing the research. They're trying to sell their product and make it sound like it is effective. So if they're doing their own research and their own kind of like checks and balances, is that valid?
I sometimes describe him as a cross between, Kermit the Frog and Spock. But he's, friendly, lighthearted, very humble because he accepts that he makes mistakes and he's constantly learning, but also really curious about humans.
The adjectives that she used to describe the robot or the Wobot are adjectives that I would use to describe a good therapist, right? So humble, friendly, smart, intelligent, right? Like being able to recognize that you make mistakes. That's definitely a part of, reflecting and being a therapist and understanding how you can get better at your craft.
We visited the San Francisco-based startup to find out what this therapy bot's all about.
It can feel weird to talk to a bot about your personal problems. So why would someone opt to do that over talking to a friend or an actual therapist?
I think the first thing to note is that people don't do it instead of talking to their friends or a therapist. Well, that's certainly not a replacement for human connection. But we do find that there's lots of reasons why people find it hard to reach out. I think one of the advantages, of course, is that it's just a chatbot.
So she's admitting that we would not replace human connection with a therapist, connection with a good friend, talking to a human about our problems with the chatbot. So I think she's insinuating, suggesting that the chatbot fills in some gaps for us.
But it's also never going to get tired. It's there for you at 2 a.m., whereas a therapist isn't. However,
damn right I'm not available at 2 a.m. I'm Mimi's.
These are very limited conversations.
Bonding with the chatbot can be awkward. So a team of writers and psychologists work to make conversations with Woebot natural.
So I noticed when I was talking to Woebot this morning, he's doing that thing where he'll ping us and say hi. I think a little soft drip was like, oh, hi, Athena, how are you? Then kind of what's going on. Kind of might ease the transition a little bit.
Interesting. So writers and psychologists are working together to kind of hone in on how to make the chatbot friendly, I guess approachable, and maybe when it interjects to you through your device throughout the day, they want to make that seamless and not so jarring. A therapist, however, would not bother you on a regular day. So that's interesting.
Most therapy bots draw heavily from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
This doesn't surprise me because when I think of CBT, it's almost like input output when we think of computers, right? So you input a certain thought, you get an output of a certain feeling and behavior. And so when you change your thoughts and feelings, core beliefs and things like that, you can identify them with almost like a computer-like skill, because you're looking at the themes of the person's inner dialogue as like an output in a computer. I think it's actually kind of okay if they're going to be using CBT, because CBT is a little bit more, in my opinion, like manualized, like computer-like.
A popular approach that dates back to the 1960s.
In CBT, what we do is we invite someone to say, well, what have you been thinking that might be influencing your mood? And so that's a moment of opportunity to reflect for insight and say, oh, I've been telling myself that.
So see, she's talking about that input output. What have I been thinking? Input, and then output is my mood, my behavior. And so that's the part that they're trying to get the chatbot to respond to and intervene in. So that's interesting.
I'm an idiot, that I'm going to get fired. Oh, that might not be a completely accurate or totally valid thought, but I can see how much it's influencing my behavior.
We gave Woebot a try to see how it would respond to a mental health issue that affects roughly 18% of the adult US population, anxiety. Then we showed the entire conversation to 3 human therapists.
Woebot, what are you doing now besides talking to little old me?
User, I'm super anxious and can barely sleep.
Woebot, I can't wait to hop into my jammies later. Z emoji.
Can I just...
His face, he's like, what the hell? That was pretty funny.
Is there any way that this anxiety might be serving you in some way? It's an interesting question.
Pretty good cognitive behavioral intervention.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. Like, how is the thought benefiting you? Because, I mean, humans engage in behavior that is typically rewarding or pleasant, and why would you be thinking negatively on purpose, like just for funsies or for no benefit at all, right?
Woebot, for example, imagine I have an exam coming up for a subject that I don't love and I didn't feel any anxiety about it whatsoever. What are the chances I would do well on that test?
Okay, so it's starting to get into like some Socratic questioning, some reframing, and I like how the user section of it is kind of like, like the question is very human-like. I don't know if I've ever heard, maybe I have, a client go like, I'm like, what? I don't understand what you're saying. I think I do a pretty good job of like explaining things, and so maybe I don't get that look or a question that directly. But again, this is a computer, so.
User, not good.
Woebot, exactly. That anxiety motivates me to start studying, and if I didn't have it, I wouldn't care at all.
What was your initial reaction to that exchange?
The dialogue actually seems pretty productive.
They gave very specific feedback on what the user is experiencing in different ways to try to reframe that.
This experience relies on a person being in a grounded emotional state, which I very rarely find my clients to be in.
That's a good point. So, and this is something I was thinking about too, like kind of in the background of my mind is, how is somebody in a real state of distress, right, gonna pick up their phone and be like, I'm gonna have the wherewithal and the ability to spell things correctly, to engage with this robot, is it a grounding tool in itself because you have to focus on what you're typing and opening the app and all of that? Or do you have to be somewhat regulated to be able to process these things, which I think you do? Cognitive behavioral therapy typically relies upon the frontal lobe, like all of this executive functioning up here, right? When you're in a stress, fight, flight, freeze response, that's the back of your brain. And that's not going to be functioning at the same time that this part of your brain is functioning. So I agree. Like, if a client is in crisis, I don't know if this would be something that's completely effective.
There's no room for stream of consciousness to occur.
I think the general use of therapy bots, if it's opening the door to a type of person who's not actually going to therapy and is just looking to plus up their life that 1 or 2%, I think it's fine.
If people are using it because they don't have the means for a therapist, then that concerns me.
Anything.
I agree. Yeah. So what that male therapist said was like spot on. Like, if you are going to use it for very minimal degrees of acuity, like you need to reframe a thought that you're thinking about. It's almost like life coaching. Like, I think they should call it a life coach bot, right? Because therapy and therapists, it's more clinical. That can't be replaced. There's nuance in there that a computer will definitely miss. So I think that it should be called a life coaching bot. That's just my opinion.
That's going to make therapy more accessible has a place.
Is it a solution to the lack of funding for mental health services? I don't think it is.
I agree. So this is a systemic issue, and I'm glad that she's mentioning this and that they interviewed actual therapists that are doing the work. I think that it's important to understand that this is not going to fix a systemic issue. Healthcare and mental health care is highly inaccessible because of high co-payments. Not every therapist accepts every insurance, and probably for good reasons, right? Like business reasons, reimbursement reasons, the cumbersome nature of having to take insurance, right? So until we fix the healthcare problem and accessibility issues in this country, then I don't think that an AI chatbot is going to be able to replace a clinical and highly trained, highly experienced therapist. I think that this is another Band-Aid, you know? So I agree.
You foresee a future where therapy bots may rival human therapists?
No.
Definitely not.
You can't universalize unconditional positive regard. You can't universalize empathy.
You can't really replace the human-human connection. I don't see how a robot would be able to provide that.
I completely agree. I think that there are elements that a therapist and only a human and a trained human, an educated, highly experienced human, can provide a person to help heal those issues like depression and anxiety and diagnoses that are bothering them every single day. So I don't know if AI will take over. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, but again, I think this is a Band-Aid, and I think I agree with the other therapists that talked about how this is a way for people to kind of plus up 1 or 2 points, like their life skills and abilities, right? But as far as replacing a human, I don't think so. I don't think it would be a good idea. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed this review and react by me, Crystal Martinez Acosta, licensed professional counselor. For more Through the Eyes of a Therapist content, subscribe and also go to the podcast. Talk to you soon.